Okay, this is your World War III update. I was not going to make a video tonight. It's late, but this is important. They're going to do it, okay? They're actually going to do it. I'm in complete disbelief and shock, even though I knew this was coming for many, many months, and we've been talking about it for probably 3 or 4 months, and they're actually going to do it. And now I have all the motivation I need to finalize some decisions that I've been on the fence about and to make some big strategic moves because, holy shit, here we go. Under the right conditions, Canada is open to sending non-combat troops to Ukraine, according to Defense Minister Bill Blair. The same guy with a permanent frown on his face. I don't even know how it's physically possible to have such a arched frown on your face. Like, you got to go and just Google the guy, okay? You'll know what I'm talking about. Anyways, this is the same guy that wants to take all our guns away. This is the same guy who wants to take all our media rights away. And now, right around the time that both of those things are about to happen, they're about to send non-combat troops to Ukraine. Okay? Think about that for a second. Isn't that convenient timing, guys? When the martial law crackdown comes and they send everybody off to war because the shit's going to hit the fan, that's when we're going to have no voice to talk about any of this stuff. That is when all of our abilities and freedoms are going to be put in a stranglehold. And this is when they're going to start shipping us off to war. When they say non-combat troops, they're talking about a tripwire. They're talking about mission creep. This is an insidious, incremental march towards a direct war with the Russians. And this is not only Canada. This is all of those other countries, with the exception of the 5 who stood up and said no because it made PR sense to do so, but they will follow in suit. When Macron brought this up at the Parents' Conference on Monday, there was about 20 countries who remained eerily quiet with respect to whether or not they were going to commit troops into Ukraine. Of course, non-combatant ones. There's no such thing as a non-combatant troop when you are funding, providing weapons, and providing ISR for one side. Now, if this was the Red Cross and they were helping, okay, fine, that's a peacekeeping force. This is not a peacekeeping force. And I mean, if you believe it is, you are incredibly naive. Vladimir Putin doesn't believe it is. In his 2.5-hour long monologue that he gave today, it was basically all about, we got nuclear weapons and we're ready to use them because for Russia, this is life or death. And we want to go in there and provide non-combat support to demine and peacekeep and blah, 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 blah bullshit. It is all, there's something in Ukraine, there's something about that country that the West is simply relentless about. Whether it's our own monetary existence that is at stake or something far worse that we're not aware of. But something is going on in that country and they don't want Russia to take it. Now, Lloyd Austin came out today and he said, if Ukraine falls, I think NATO will go toe-to-toe with Russia, he said. If Ukraine falls, I really think NATO will go toe-to-toe with Russia. So either you fork over the money or we're going to war with Russia. Think about that. We're going to war with, he realizes that that means a nuclear incident. Whether it's isolated or not, that means a nuclear incident. Vladimir Putin vehemently emphasized this point today, that if NATO joins the war, they're going to let them rip. They're going to let them rip. And oddly enough, U.S. Strategic Commander Anthony Cotton said that Russia today has the largest and most diverse arsenal of nuclear weapons of any country in the world. So you would think, knowing what was going on since 2014, that they would have prepared for this eventuality. But no. But that doesn't stop Estonian Prime Minister Kallas, who happens to be on the Russian wanted list of all things, is not afraid of Russia and thinks sending NATO ground troops to Ukraine ought to be under consideration. Well, of course she's going to say that, because even if she was a civilian, she wouldn't be conscripted to go and fight the war. Unless she was in Ukraine, where it's democracy and it's equality for all, it's equality under totalitarian rules, so even the women get to go and fight against their will. So yeah, and it's not only them that are saying they want to send troops, it's all of those other countries, okay? European official says everyone knows that there are Western special forces operating in Ukraine, and they have been for some time. In fact, Olaf Scholz says that British soldiers in Ukraine have been helping fire missiles. German Chancellor was criticized for flagrant abuse of intelligence that could endanger UK personnel on the ground. So they're mad at him because he let one rip. Or let one slip, I should say. Gertrude van der Leyen, president of the EU, said that I am proud to announce that we will set up an Office of Defense Innovation in Kiev. Who do you think is going to be in this office? Is it just going to be some guys with a clipboard, some like corporate, suit-wearing types? Of course not. It's going to be either retired military personnel. They're going to say that. It doesn't even matter, because we don't know who's in there. It's going to be mercenaries. It's going to be somebody who has military experience, who's in the know, who's in the loop. This will bring Ukraine ever closer to Europe and will enable all EU countries to draw on Ukraine's battlefield experience and expertise in defense innovation. So they want to get their money's worth out of these guys, right? And of course, for Russia, this is a matter of life or death. Russian diplomat Dmitry Berechevsky has said this. While for the United States, the conflict is a lucrative business project, for Russia, the issue of Ukraine is not about territory or geopolitics, but a matter of life and death, said the diplomat. It's about being able to live as we did for ages as one family with the same core values that are not foreign, that foreign intruders cannot destroy. I can't believe they're going to, with the Lloyd Austin comments, that should be enough to let us know that maybe we should start negotiating. But they're willing to send NATO troops in there because they know that the Russians are winning, at least at this point in time. And it's coming at great expense, don't get me wrong. And I'm not, a Russophile by any stretch of the means, but I'm also not a Russophobe. I'm an objective realist who's trying to see this situation for what it is. Germany's attack plan for World War III leaked. This is different than the one that was basically laying out a timeline that said the war was going to start later this year and really flare up in 2025. The German government has developed a hypothetical plan that Russia can adhere to when attacking NATO countries. So here is what they claim. Here's how they claim the war is going to unfold. First, Russia is going to start with, and you can almost just call this projection and flip it around, because it's very likely if the Russians are going to do this, we're doing this, or we're going to do this. Works both ways. A covert disinformation campaign and cyber attacks. That's been happening already on both sides. So we're already past phase one. Phase two, the concentration of troops at the borders. Let me see, biggest NATO exercises in 40 years, closing down the Polish border, making it illegal to be there and protest and take pictures of the military that's moving in, exercises all throughout the Baltics and Finland, as well as fortifying the border with bunkers, building nuclear fallout shelters, sending all kinds of personal protective equipment into Ukraine. Yeah, I think it's safe to say that there's a concentration of troops at the borders. Then comes the attack itself. Well, what do they mean by that? So when they send these demining people into there, I still can't get over that, how Macron could be so careless to say such a thing. Because anyone with half a brain, let's make sure my mic's good, anyone with half a brain would realize that the only way you engage in demining operations is if there's peacetime, or if you're on the offensive, or if you're planning on going on the offensive, right? So if you're planning on going on the offensive into Belarus, say, the one who has nuclear weapons, then you would demine. There's no demining the East. where the Russians are pushing forward because that's your defensive line. So what are they talking about demining? Are they talking about demining the Black Sea? Even that. Going through the Bosphorus Strait. There's treaties that say they can't do that. They're saying they're going to go through the Danube River. What is that? That's going to amount to a confrontation with the Russians as well, because you're going to have warships inside the Black Sea. NATO warships in the Black Sea. And it's a war zone. It's a legit war zone. Then, after the attack itself, by the Russians, of course, they're telling us what's probably going to happen, what we're going to do as well, then a global conflict will unfold, even in space, they say. So kiss your internet goodbye. The Houthis have already disabled undersea cables, and it got zero media attention. I mean, the breakneck pace of things at this point in time is staggering. I had to just kind of take a step back. I was overwhelmed. I was ready to throw my phone today because there's just too much information. And I know somebody of the Pinker School of Philosophy, the Steven Pinker School of Philosophy, will say, well, you just have more access to information. That means more things are happening. And while this is true, that, you know, there's so much that back in World War II, you wouldn't hear about something for like a week. But this is not to say that we're not in the thick of a quickening of sorts here. And that compared to the baseline of anomalous, chaotic events, we're definitely exceeding that. The German government has developed a hypothetical plan in order to combat Russia. The document occupies 13 pages. It's called Risk Analysis for Civil Defense. First comes civil defense, and Olaf Scholz is going to continue to pretend because he knows that ultimately Germany is Europe's superpower. Okay, once they decide to mobilize once again, it's going to come down to Germans versus Russians, especially if the United States bails. Even though they don't have nukes, they can have nukes very quickly. And it's quite possible that the United States will give them nukes. According to the authors of the document, Russia's attack will be a fundamental change in the security situation for the whole of Europe. And they say this is a plausible scenario. The first phase, Russia will deploy a disinformation campaign in the media, social networks, and other methods to split the population, destabilize society, and undermine confidence in free democracy. Now, you see how they can leverage this. They can say any dissent that arises as a result of the conflict, as a result of the austerity, as a result of the inflation and the rising energy prices, and just, you know, pick your issue, union issues, whatever. All of that, they can say, well, it's just the Russians, right? So it basically makes any civil unrest, any dissident movement illegitimate, or they can say that it's illegitimate and that it's just, you know, a Russian troll bot farms fueling all this craziness. At this stage, cyber attacks and attacks on critical infrastructure are also expected. So there's going to be kinetic attacks as well, power plants, power lines, dams, etc. It is assumed that Russia will act covertly at this stage. Therefore, individual operations cannot be unambiguously attributed to a specific state or special service. So, this is going to be a gray zone type of conflict for the first part. Now, in the second phase, according to the authors of the document, Russia is going to concentrate its troops at the borders of the North Atlantic Alliance. Now, they have, of course, Russia splitting into several different military districts, okay? And the Russians are planning on mobilizing another like 800,000 troops. I think that's going to come after Vladimir Putin is reelected. Once again, it's coming. And you could see in the consternation of the crowd that was watching this 2.5 hour long monologue that Putin gave today, that they were nervous, probably because they had to go to the washroom, but they knew that they couldn't. Otherwise, they might be falling through a window. But it was probably more so because they know that hard times are coming, okay? It is assumed that cases of sabotage and cyber attacks in this phase will become more frequent. Espionage will increase. Attempts to disable satellites are possible in order to delay the advance of NATO units to set boundaries. Oh, okay, so we're already sending troops while this is happening. Check. But they're going to, take out the satellites or do GPS jamming to interfere with our coming to defend our borders. So when we do it, it's defense. I'm just trying to be a realist here, guys, because, again, I'm not saying I'm not a Russophile or a Russophobe. NATO members will respond by deploying their troops on the eastern border. Right. So it's a game of, who did it first. The Russian army can attack nuclear reactors, chemical plants, and hydraulic structures. Well, we've pretty much done all of that, or we've enabled the Ukrainians to do all of that inside of Russia. In fact, numerous countries, including the chief of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg himself, has said that Ukraine can utilize F-16s in order to attack deep inside Russia. They're going to give them long-range weapons. I mean, holy shit. Yeah, tomorrow I'm making that decision that I was on the fence about. There is no doubt about it. Because once this kicks off, everything changes. Everything changes once this kicks off. The third stage is a direct attack, is when Russia will strike with conventional and non-conventional weapons on the territory of the alliance. Do they mean chemical weapons? Do they mean like asymmetrical attacks, the dirty bomb? No, they mean tactical nuclear weapons, the thing that they've been talking up. Of course, this leaked document that suggests that Russia has lowered its tactical nuclear threshold in response to what is going on is conveniently timed to coincide with what they're saying here. It is assumed that many space satellites will be disabled at this time. So kiss GPS goodbye. And of course, if they do utilize the space nuke, then that's it. I mean, every satellite on that side of the planet is toast. This is why I don't think they'll do that, because they don't want to take out their own and Chinese satellites. But I mean, if it comes down to scorched earth and an end-of-day scenario, they'll do it. Putin has said, if there is no Russia, there is no world. There can be no world. And in the fourth phase, Russian troops will break deep into Europe. You know, the Russian troops that can't even break through Ukraine right now? They're admitting that Ukraine is the bulwark, that Ukraine is the primary defensive line, even though they haven't employed a lot of the weapon systems yet. And this is what the Russophiles get wrong. They think that just because Ukraine is holding back the Russians, that the F-35s and F-22s and all the other toys that NATO has to bring to bear will have zero effect on the Russians. That is false. However, this contradiction here to suggest that Russian troops are just going to break deep into Europe when they can't even really make a significant amount of progress in an expedient amount of time in Ukraine is a contradiction. It just is a contradiction, unless you're admitting that the Ukrainian military is far and away superior to Europe's armies, primarily because they're some of the most well-trained, they're the most well-equipped, most experienced in actual combat, and they fight the Russian way of war. So the Russians are fighting their twin brother. According to the authors of the report, Russia will be ready to use biological, chemical, and tactical nuclear weapons in the fourth phase. The fighting will take place on land, at sea, and in the air. The global conflict will affect outer space. The drafters of the document expect Russia to use some kind of nuclear electromagnetic pulse that will disable all electrons. They've been planning this all. You really have to go and get a condensed view of the timeline. This is just like a story. It's a movie. You know, this would make a great Hollywood film if it wasn't so fucking terrifying. But if you just took like one event from every week and then you condensed that into the span of 2 weeks, we would be in a nightmarish scenario at this point in time. Okay, I'm talking about everything. Moving the nukes to Belarus, getting rid of the nuclear treaty, starting up the nuclear testing, rolling out the Sarmat missiles today, the new Sarmat missiles, that 50 megatons, 3,300 times more powerful than Hiroshima. One of these Sarmat nukes, just one, can wipe France off the map. Literally wipe it off the map, because it has multiple independent reentry vehicles. I think up to 16, I believe, and then a bunch of decoys to make sure they can't be shot down. Not that you can, because they're traveling at freaking insane speeds. So that's what's going down. Now, there's something else developing on the Transnistrian front. And the Prime Minister of Moldova went and visited Zelensky the other day, and they're getting ready to do some crazy shit. Now, the late Vladimir Zhirinovsky, who has made all kinds of prescient predictions, this is what he said before he died. He said, there are plenty of weapons there, in reference to Transnistria. There's a lot of weapons there, a lot. I don't even know. I mean, the Russians have to have that place rigged and ready to blow, because if that falls into Ukrainian hands, that's going to be a force to be reckoned with. Weapons in Moldova in the village of Golbazna were stored for the Third World War in Europe. That is, we were prepared for the fact that a war might start. And there was a main warehouse in the southwestern direction. I do not know why you would keep all that stuff in Transnistria when you knew a war was going to break out in Ukraine, unless he knows something that we don't. If you blow it up, what is there, Europe will tremble. Therefore, the warehouse will be there for us, its intended purpose. Our answer will be harsh. We must tell them in advance that we will wash your face with blood, and you will not have time to reach the Chisinau airport, Chisinau, capital of Moldova, and no one will protect you. This is a small country. 2 hours and you've reached the end of this country. Our best troops are there and can plow through half of Europe. Therefore, they should sit down and sock it. I've been wondering, why haven't they taken Transnistria yet? It's because I think that the Moldovans don't want the Ukrainians inside their business, but it appears as though Moldova is under pressure because there is a pro-Russian population there, as far as I know, not entirely, not the majority. There's a Romanian population there as well. But apparently there's some, pro-Russian dissident forces, and maybe they want to get this done before that catches flame, like it is in Serbia and places like Hungary, and even in some of the more, very Western countries that are already seeing farmers with protest signs saying, Putin, come and save us. I mean, they're probably agent provocateurs, but you just never know, okay? Now, Vladimir Putin just gave that insanely long speech today. I don't even know if I want to dive into that because, look, I understand the need to be thorough, but Putin needs to understand that we do not respond to logic over here, okay? You have to understand that at this point in time. Our leaders don't care about logic. It's about optics, optics, optics. Russia is about logic, logic, logic. Unfortunately, they have the will to jurisprudence that we simply do not have here in the West. And I'm not saying again because, Putin's speech was rife with contradictions as well. Because on the one hand, he's talking about how the United States is making up all these lies about how they have nuclear weapons in space and they deny having nuclear weapons in space. Yet on the other hand, the Russians have been the ones who've been heavily developing their nuclear program. I mean, that's just a fact. I mean, look at all of the deployment systems. I mean, that's one of the greatest ways to skirt any treaty that are all now defunct, was to develop these deployment systems, because ultimately that's what it's all about. If you can create sophisticated deployment systems and sophisticated defensive systems, then in a way it doesn't matter if you can't make any more nukes. It doesn't matter if there's nuclear mutual inspections. It doesn't matter if there's a New START treaty and you have to notify the Americans as to where your weapons are when your weapons cannot be defended against. And so while Putin on the one hand is saying that, hey, we just want to make peace and blah, 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 they've been arming and developing these nuclear weapons that, according to the United States, they have not in this period of time. The United States has not. In fact, as I said, the commander of U.S. Stratcom today has said that the Russians clearly have an edge in this respect. And I know some people are saying, well, we got stuff in secret. No, that's not the point. For a nuclear deterrent, you want it to be known. You want the Russians to know. But I'll tell you, it is no surprise that on the same day that this whole space nuke story emerged, the Americans, in a lesser-known story, launched satellites that were carrying or the military satellites that are going to enable them to, according to them, track hypersonic missiles. Now, is that the case? Or is there something more that we don't know? We know there's secret space planes up there. We know that Elon Musk is going to do whatever he's told. And I know some people don't believe that, but it's true. Okay, he's going to do whatever he's told. It's not because he's necessarily a bad dude or anything. They just, you know, he's their dude, and he's going to do whatever he's told because he doesn't want to die. So it is what it is. He's got a lot of kids to feed. I'm sure they could live. I'm sure they could live off the inheritance money, though, if he decided to, you know, say enough is enough. But that's not going to happen. Russian industries are working in 3 shifts to roll out as many products as the front needs in 3 shifts. This is Vladimir Putin's speech. A friend of mine highlighted some parts of the speech because it was just nauseating to sit through. And it's not because I don't appreciate the nuance, but like, man, at some point you have to understand that this is futile to try to talk to us in such a way because we don't care. We just care about big explosions and bad guys and good guys. That's all we see, man. I don't know why I'm speaking in a Mexican accent. I apologize. It's late. The so-called West, with its colonialist practices and its penchant for inciting ethnic conflicts around the world, not only seeks to impede our progress, but also envisions Russia as a dependent, declining, and dying space where they can do as they please. Absolutely. They want Russia to be the world's resource bitch. They want Russia to be the gas station with nukes, not the broader sphere of influence and a player and innovator and somebody who is building trade relations with other countries, helping other countries emerge out of poverty and not keeping them under the boot heel of the World Bank racket and blah, 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 blah. Armed forces have required a lot of experience. I'm not going to read all that. Basically, you just want to know the good stuff. We will do everything to put an end to it, eradicate Nazism, and fulfill. Why can't I say Nazism? Like, why do we feel so? It's almost like, isn't that weird? Nazism. That's what it is. Eradicate Nazism and fulfill all the objectives of the special military operation, as well as defend sovereignty and ensure that our people are safe. The strategic nuclear forces are on full combat alert, and the ability to use them is assured. Did you guys see the video of the troop, the soldier who was in the crowd of the Putin speech, and he was looking at the camera? That's like that's going to be the biggest meme of 2024. I hope people remember that because that was a historic moment. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll show you it in tomorrow's update. That was frickin' hilarious. But that guy clearly knows something. He was just looking at the camera in this catatonic sort of way with his eyes wide open like he was on some kind of drugs. But apparently he was a vet who lost an arm. So maybe he's got some PTSD stuff going on. Avant-garde hypersonic ICBMs, as well as the Peresvit laser complexes, have also entered combat duty. The Berezvnik, a cruise missile with unlimited range, that's the nuclear-powered cruise missile, absolutely crazy, is about to complete its testing stage, and so is the Poseidon, an unmanned underwater nuclear-powered nuclear torpedo. These systems have proven that they meet the highest standards, and it would not be an exaggeration to say that they offer unique capabilities. Our troops are also the first serially produced Sarmat heavy ballistic missiles. Soon we will show them off to you on their combat alert duty in the areas of their deployment. Efforts to develop several other new weapon systems continue. We are also aware that the Western attempts to draw us into an arms race, thereby exhausting us, mirroring the strategy they successfully employed in the Soviet Union in the 1980s. Let me remind you that in 1981 and 1988, the Soviet Union's military spending amounted to 13% of GDP. Anyways, I'm not going to read any more of this because I'm tired, but just know they're going to do it. So if you got big life decisions, You need to base your life around NATO going to war with Russia. Okay, that's what we're going to do. Or it's just going to be a permanent, very, very warm Cold War. Let's hope that that's the best case scenario right now, that we're going to be in a permanent, very, very warm Cold War, but likely a hot one. Get ready, folks. The best way to support the channel, CanadianPreparedness.com. Thanks for watching.